Hello third grade, so today we are going to do our Tempera Paint Skill Builder page. And in order to save paint and not be too wasteful, you are going to get a paint palette with all 6 rainbow colors that you're going to share with your shoulder partner. And then you are going to get your own individual small paint palette that has just black and white on it. So on your tray, you'll have a circle paint palette with the rainbow colors, and then you'll probably have 2 small paint palettes of black and white, one for you and one for your shoulder partner. So the first thing I think is going to be easiest is if you and your shoulder partner paint the rainbow colors in the color wheel order. And I have given you hints or the answers, if you want to go that far, with the letters around it so you know where to paint. Now, just painting this in and rushing is not what I want you to do. Since I've already given you the answers for the color wheel order, I want you to take your time and practice painting in neatly, completely, and making sure your paintbrush is dried off. So hopefully you get a dry paintbrush from me, but if for some reason you've put your paintbrush in the water basin before you started, or I gave you a wet one, you're going to pull your paintbrush across the paper towel to make sure it's dry, and then you're going to start with these rainbow colors to paint in the color wheel. So dip your paintbrush in, but don't dip it all the way up to the gold part, about halfway up the bristles, and use that, keeping the paintbrush up on its tiptoes. Since we're using a square tipped paintbrush, you should be able to paint the edges and the point of the color wheel nice and neat, depending on how you hold your paintbrush. So the edge is a straight edge, the bristles are, so I try to use those along the straight line of the color wheel. And look, I dipped it halfway up and I was able to paint in that whole space. So now I'm going to rinse my paintbrush off. I'm going to use the teeth at the bottom of the water basin and go back and forth. If you dipped too far and you have paint on your gold part of your paintbrush, it's not going to come off when you're using the teeth. You're going to have to put your paintbrush behind the teeth in the water basin and swish it around like this, and it will take the paint off your gold part of your paintbrush. Then you're going to pull it across the paper towel, either pull it away from you or towards you. And then you're going to dip halfway up the bristles, whatever next color you want to paint, and you're just going to paint this color wheel in as neatly as you possibly can. So go slow and try to stay right inside those black lines. Now I'm going to take a moment to paint in my color wheel nice and neat. I'm not going to make you watch me. So I'm going to come back to you once I'm finished coloring in my color wheel all the way. Rinse my paintbrush off. Dry my paintbrush off. All right, so my color wheel is completely painted in. I want you to notice how nicely each of the edges of the spaces are kept and painted, so I don't have paint sloshing and overlapping into other colors. And remember that you always rinse your paintbrush off and dry it off before you go to a new color. So now let's jump up to the top, and we're going to use a cool color to create 3 tints. So you're going to pick one of the cool colors on your paint tray or on your shared paint palette, and you're going to move it into the space next to your white, because when you mix tints, you're mixing white with a color. So pick a cool color, either green, blue, or violet, and you're going to put it in the divot next to the white. So I'm going to do blue. So I'm going to take some blue with my paintbrush and scoop some up and put it in the divot here next to the white. So I scooped up my paint and I put it in the divot. So now I'm going to take some of my white and I'm going to mix it with my blue. Now when you mix, just swirling around and leaving both colors showing is not mixed. You have to keep swirling around until both colors disappear and you only have one color showing. So look at that. That's a beautiful blue. So I'm going to very carefully paint that in my first box. So my paintbrush is covered and super thick with paint. So I'm going to pull it across inside the box to get some of that paint out of my paintbrush. And then I'm going to use this paint to move it around in the box and use the edge of my square paintbrush to create a nice neatly painted square. So notice when I'm painting the left or right side of my square, I pull up or down with my paintbrush, and when I'm painting the top or bottom of my square, I'm pulling side to side. All right, so that's my first tent. So now I need to mix more white in with the color that I just painted. So I'm going to take more white, move it over, and remember, you're not mixed up all the way if you can see both colors. So you got to keep mixing until both colors disappear and you only have one color mixed. And that takes a few seconds. You can't rush that process. All right, so now you're going to paint this next to that one, and it should look different. So if I put the paint down on this box and it looks the same as this one, then I have to go back and put more white, mix it around, and paint again. Don't just say, oh well, it looks the same, and keep painting. Go back and fix your mistake. So I have mixed enough white, so this is a different color than the first color I painted. And so now I'm going to come back and very carefully with my square tipped paintbrush, I'm going to get in those corners of the square and try to stay right within this space. So that means I have to paint slowly. All right, so there's one color, one tent. There's a second tent, so now I need to make a third tent. So I'm going to take more of this white and I'm going to move it over. And then I'm going to swirl it around until two colors become one. So swirl around, and swirl around. This takes a minute. I still have two colors here because the edges of my divot here are a different color. All right. So, whoops, I still see some blue. Not mixed in. All right. So here's my last and final tent. This tent should look different than the middle tent. And it does. So now I'm gonna finish painting very neatly and completely and fill in this box. All right, so there are my three tents. So now I need to use a warm color to make three shades, but the first thing I need to do is clean this paintbrush off. I don't want to get this messy paintbrush mixed in with my shades. So I'm going to take this paintbrush, run it across the teeth in my water basin, pull it out. Oh, look, I've got paint on my gold, so I'm going to put it in the space behind the teeth and swish it around. Well, most of the paint is off my gold, but I just have a smidge right there, so I'm going to swish around again. Now I'm going to dry off my paintbrush, my paintbrush, and if the paper towel is really saturated with you and your shoulder partner, you can always flip the paper towel over and use the other side. So I'm going to dry my paintbrush off, and now this time I am going to mix a warm color to create three shades. So when you make shades, you mix black with a color. So I need to choose red, orange, or yellow to make three shades. I'm going to choose yellow, so I'm going to take my mini paint palette, and I'm going to take my clean paintbrush and scoop up some yellow and put it in the divot next to the black. Okay. So now, to mix my first shade, I'm going to take a little bit of black and mix it with the yellow. Shades, you only need a little bit of the color to make a shade because black is so dark it takes over. But when you mix tints with the white, you might need more white than you think. So I know with the black is super dark and it just kind of takes over. So I'm just going to touch the black with my paintbrush, just a touch, and then I'm going to mix it with this yellow. And remember, if you can see two colors, it's not mixed all the way. So you got to mix until two colors disappear and they become one color. So now I'm going to take this paint color and I'm going to paint it in the first box and pull my paintbrush inside the box to get that paint out of my paintbrush and onto my paper. I'm going to use the corners of my square tipped paintbrush to paint in the corners of the square nice and neat. Okay, now I'm going to make a second shade. So I'm going to add more black to this color to change it to make a second color. So when you see two colors like this, that's not mixed all the way. So you gotta keep mixing till two colors become one color. All right, and now when I paint this in the middle box, it has to look different than the first box. And it looks different. So now I'm going to paint in this box very carefully and neatly. All right, and then finally my third shade, take some more black, mix it on over here until two colors become one color. And this looks different than my last color, so I am good to paint in this square. All right, so now I'm going to take my paintbrush, put it in the water basin, and I'm going to take this paper and put it on the drying rack with my name at the top. If we have placemats underneath our papers, you can put your placemat and your paper both on the drying rack, and then I'll show you how to clean up. Good job, third grade. That's how you complete your Tempera Skill Builder page.